It is time for us to take a look at what is happening across borders. This is Smart Means Business, and with that, we take a look at those stories that are making headlines from the global scene and the African continent. And as a matter of fact, we do start with what is happening on the East African Community Bloc, where we start with Tanzania suspending fuel levy to caution citizens from the costly pump prices. Tanzania has suspended the fuel levy for the next 3 months to caution consumers from cost increases as it anticipates a spike in global oil prices following the Russian-Ukraine war. The Ministry of Energy, in a statement on Monday, that is in Tanzania, had earlier on said that a litre, that 100 Tanzanian shillings, which is $0.043 surcharge on a litre of petrol, diesel and kerosene imposed since July 2021 has been scrapped off by the Tanzanian government as the government is monitoring the international market in the face of the Eastern Europe conflict. The suspension will remain in place until May 2022, despite the fact that this decision will cause the government to lose about 30 billion Tanzanian shillings, which is around $12.95 million in monthly revenue. It is seen as necessary to protect the citizenry against the impacts of global oil prices worldwide. That is according to the Ministry of Energy in Tanzania. And the ministry furthermore said that this decision had not been made, and the pump prices in Tanzania from March onwards would have become far too high for various reasons, including the war that is developing in Eastern Europe, it added. Remember, Russia is the leading producer of natural gas and the second when it comes to the oil-producing countries. The statement was released by the Energy Minister, January Makamba, and he had signed the amendment to the legislation establishing this fuel levy. The government introduced the fuel levy via the new Finance Act of 2021, which came into effect on July 1st last year as the start of the current financial year 2021-2022. Rising prices from petrol products have been cited by the Bank of Tanzania as one of the main reasons, along with food prices, for a corresponding rise in the country's inflation rate. If in its January 2022 economic review, the central bank said that the inflation in the energy, fuel and utilities shot up from 3.4% in November 2021 to 4.4% in December, in tandem with increases in domestic pump prices for petroleum products, that is in the land of Tanzania. And Russia, which invaded Ukraine last week, is facing severe disruptions to its exports of all commodities, as from oil, when you look at the grains, after Western nations imposed stiff sanctions on Moscow and cut off more of Russian banks from the SWIFT international payment system. Russia accounts for about 10% of the global oil supply. So you could see that this is actually going to be pushing to the northern part of Tanzania, and the northern part is definitely Uganda. So if Tanzania is actually hiking here, what will happen when it reaches Uganda?
And we're just into our, estimations towards our first drop of oil that we'll be producing around the country, because we never know when is the Russia-Ukraine conflict or war going to be at peace. So what if it takes, 3-4 years, and that means the effect on fuel from Tanzania is going to remain the same or even could worsen at a point. So which actually is going to be reflected back here if we're going to be doing business with Tanzania in regards to our pipeline project. You never know how it's going to be affected, but we're going to be seeking experts on that to at least let us know what is the country expecting, or what should we expect out of the fuel and also energy inflations in regards to that particular perspective there. But moving on, we're now heading to a wildlife ministries from Namibia, which is agreeing to send around 35 to 40 cheetahs to India. Now, Namibia has agreed to translocate around 35 to 40 cheetahs to India over a period of 5 years. The agreement was linked after the Indian delegation at the Union Environment Ministry and the Wildlife Institute of India visited Namibia. around February 22nd, that was the last week. And during their talks with Namibian officials, they asked for 35 to 40 cheetahs for the period of 5 years, which was agreed as well. And the memorandum of understanding between the environment ministries for two countries was expected, or is expected, to be signed to formalize the transfer, and India formally being declared cheetah extinct around 1952 and aiming at reintroducing the predator in its wildness. But cheetahs are famous for the speed and the ability to also be one of the Africa's most engaged or enlarged big cats. Their numbers have also seen a decline by 90% over the past 100 years, dropping from 100,000 to 10,000 as we speak of today. And the main reason for the decline are human-wildlife conflict, disappearing habitat and loss of prey around there. But earlier on, wildlife conservation in the country criticized the government after it announced the capture of wild elephant for export without disclosing the deals for the exportation of the animals. Namibia's government went on ahead to say that the country's growing elephant herds, numbering around 24,000, were causing human-wildlife conflict. The Namibia-based Cheetah Conservation Fund was highlighting on that particular one. What do we learn as a country, from Namibia now exporting or agreeing to send around 35 to 40 cheetahs to India? At least this is coming with a cost really, and this is also a result after the agreement that was earlier signed in Namibia of the famous cheetahs was dropping. The drop is quite a huge one if you're to compare the number of around 100,000, and now it is less by 10,000 because of the activities that are happening there. I mean, I'm copying the ideology that poaching in wildlife is everywhere, or it could be across the entire globe.
But this also poses a bigger question to us. How are we conserving our wildlife? Because when you look at the situation of Namibia agreeing to have 35 to 40 cheetahs, imagine a scenario whereby they come to Uganda and they need these cheetahs. Remember, we are going to export. But then imagine looking, or maybe elephants, and then we try to trace down all our game parks or game reserves when we can't meet that number. So it will also become a very big shame on the nation. So I'm personally picking lessons here for Uganda's wildlife, that how are we conserving? Imagine in a situation where
government is coming out to say stop poaching, do not resist arrest.
So look at that situation where maybe let's say a European country comes and says, well, it seems when we've seen our statistics show Uganda has plenty of these particular species of animals.
Maybe we speak elephants, lions,
and we also have challenges
giraffes.
with lions. We also just import these lions. There's a time we imported from South Africa, then the others are imported from Kenya. So you can see it becomes also difficult to us. So I think, like you said, that wildlife is actually pushing for the end of poaching. I think this has been in place for quite a while.
I think what we can manage as a country in regards to proper or effective exportation, if we are to take out or to increase ourselves in regards to wildlife, we can manage maybe chimpanzees. Because we've got at least a number of chimpanzees around our reserves. Yes. So if we could have an exchange country.
A lot of gorillas in the southwestern, the windy, impenetrable, around almost all those.
And rhinos too. We've got a number of rhinos too around some game parks or national parks, for example, Queen Elizabeth. So if we are to, consider trade in regards to our wildlife, those major 3 or 4 entities at least that can sell us out there.
Okay, and when you look at that, still on the journey of seeing that the tourism industry grows bigger. But away from that, let's head to Kenya, as Kenya Airways has signed a service deal with BOEING. The US plane maker BOEING and Kenya Airways have signed a memorandum of understanding for landing gear exchange that will see the national carrier lower its inventory cost and maintain aircraft reliability. Under the program, Boeing will manage repairs and overhaul processes for the Kenyan Airways 787 fleet, which includes the engineering and technical aspects. The agreement was signed on Wednesday at the 2022 MRO Middle East Exhibition and Aviation Industry event for maintenance, repair and overhaul. As part of the agreement, Boeing will make available 9 landing gear ship sets to Kenya Airways and enabling more efficient and cost-effective maintenance operations. Kenya Airways Technical Director Evans Chihara said the program would enable the airline to safeguard operations and minimize disruptions. Remember, the Kenyan Airways is also looking for a smooth recovery. There have been some partnerships with the South African Airways and all of those to see that it gets back to being one of the pride of African's aviation sector. So when you look at this, the loss-making carrier has a fleet of 9 787 Dreamliner planes, of its 36 aircraft, and 19 of which it owns, while having 7 on lease. According to the Vice President of Commercial Services, Sales and Marketing for Boeing, that is Abesi Yitabarek, came out and revealed that this is just one example of how they can bring value to the customers through solutions tailored to meet their specific needs. And in this case, an increase in Kenya Airways 787 maintenance will bring and boost efficiency and cost effectiveness, as this will allow a plan of cash flow in terms of the cash outflow in advance, and to work with Boeing to ensure that the network schedule integrity is achieved for both Boeing and Kenya.
And that one is a great one that will be at least developing transportation in regards to airways for Kenya, for both Boeing and Kenya, really. Because if one entity is benefiting, that will cross over to another. It's just definite. But if you look at maybe what to borrow as a country here in our integrations or developments regarding the airways, it's good, you know, to always involve in partnership.
Ours has been paying managers and staff who are already suspended, and there have been claims greatly saying that how can a national carrier pay people who are no longer
of value on service, because the minister came and suspended them after actually there was there was trading ongoing on board for grasshoppers,
and now those are still being put on payroll. So I remember the company is
so when you're on suspension, you don't expect any.
No, because some had
it's not definite. The ministry did not come out to say
termination of contracts. When you look at some of the reports coming through, and then the biggest worry is it is not making any profits whatsoever, because it has just been revived and they are yet to evaluate how best they can make profits. So you don't need to make all of these expenses if you're a national carrier. I think now this is also hitting back to the Kenya Airways, but for them, they are trying to look for ways of making sure they get back to business.
And I wish all the best for them. But looking out for how Ukraine and Russia is continuing to affect a number of people, not only those in Russia or Ukraine, you will realize that the tourism sector around Ukraine, even vice versa in Russia, is being affected. And also tourism around other countries, because for example, Sonko, you and I, if we just happen to go to Ukraine or Russia for our schedule of maybe tour, and then while there something happens, what is going to be our fate? And let us now look at how the ambassador is going to be meeting Ukrainian tourists stranded in Zanzibar. The Ukraine's ambassador to Kenya, Andriy, is scheduled to be meeting Zanzibar officials and Ukraine tourists stranded in the island following Russia's invasion of their country. Now, the Zanzibar government earlier on this week evening said it was working closely with the Ukraine embassy in Nairobi to help the stranded tourists around there. There are also talks to be helping them to fly to Poland, which is accommodating refugees fleeing the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainian airspace has also been closed for all civilian flights following the Russian military action. And when you look at Zanzibar, saying that it is currently accommodating almost 1,000 Ukrainian tourists, Zanzibar's tourist minister, Laila Mohammed Musa, said that the stranded Ukrainians are being accommodated in various hotels, with some staying free of charge. I repeat that, and receiving humanitarian support. But most of them were scheduled to fly back to their country due to the war and are not being forced to remain in Zanzibar. And some of them are running away from the money to be paid around the bills, adding that. And the Zanzibar president, Hassan Mwinyi, told journalists earlier on again that he was aware of the stranded Ukrainian tourists and who had requested for help from their government. But in a quote, he said, "We are in discussions with the owners of the hotels to see how they can help them." But Zanzibar has recently been receiving large groups of tourists from Ukraine and upcoming tourist market because it has got a number of islands, surely, that could attract them for that particular matter. And continuing now to discuss around that one, Sonko, you will realize that how conflictions or how wars among other countries would greatly affect even the neighboring countries. A country like Zanzibar, haven't you ever admired to be one of the islands or to go around one of the islands in Zanzibar and have you maybe enjoy your money?
I want to make my wedding from there, by the way.
Enjoy your money, enjoy your
money. Have you heard that statement? Pardon? I want to either have my wedding there or my reception in Zanzibar. I feel Zanzibar is a very good place to be.
Okay, when are you having your wedding?
I'm here to have it.
So that we start...
So I'm here to have it. Or if anyone can send in collections for for as long as that. But now you can see how the Ukraine and Russia war is actually trying to create an impact, a very negative impact on most of the countries and on most of the economies. A war that in most cases you look at and think it is not even on the African continent, but now we're starting to feel that pinch. And even our tourism, now oil, so a lot.
So what is happening, to put this in context, is that the Ukrainian people, Ukrainian tourists, come to Zanzibar to have fun, to enjoy their life, so without knowing
a lot of numbers.
Yes, without knowing what is going to be happening in their country, or the Russian
people. Expect to get back.
Very. And remember, your tourism or your flight has got, an end, or your visa or whatever it is you're using, your ticket, you have got a limit or the date of, when you'll be traveling back. And that one is not happening now. And the Zanzibar government is now meeting costs of Ukrainian tourists. But a case in point, how about the country? Because we are following up at least with the tourism sector around the country to let us know, are there any Russians around the country or Ukrainian tourists that had come in earlier? Because as a country here, we also got beautiful sceneries to tour around. We're the Pearl of Africa, you get.
Yes.
So there could be, at least there could be a Ukrainian or Russian around the country, but we're going to be following up and how government is meant to help them out, or in which cost or whose cost are they feeding on. But this one is causing a lot of economic impact on the government, because if government is, because it highlighted here, some are staying for free in certain hotels, remember they've got to feed, so all that cost is being met by government. So what is the fate of their economic status?
Very, very harsh when you look at that. But continuing with the last report coming in from the SMB across borders, still with the Ukraine and Russia war, a Russian billionaire in the names of Friedman is yet to contest groundless European Union sanctions on his motherland. So after some of Russia's richest oligarchs were cut out of the global financial system, billionaires like Mikhail Friedman and Poetry Aven vowed to contest European Union sanctions imposed in retaliation of the invasion of Ukraine. Russia's economy is facing one of the gravest crises since the 1991 fall of the Soviet Union, after the West imposed creeping sanctions on almost all of the Russian financial and corporate system following the Kremlin's order of a military operation. Russian President Vladimir Putin says the special military operation is essential to ensure Russian security after the United States enlarged the NATO military alliance to Russia's borders and supported pro-Western leaders in Kiev. Some of the so-called oligarchs who built fortunes in the chaos of the 1990s, including Friedman, who was born in Western Ukraine, have in recent days publicly called for peace. But the EU on Monday slammed sanctions on both Friedman and Avon, long-term partners who earn billions of dollars from oil, banking and retail. Both said the EU's allegations were false and defam Friedman. So who is a UK tax resident, that is Friedman, cast the war in Ukraine as a tragedy and said it should stop, but refrained from saying more, citing the sensitiveness of commenting on politics in Russia. A Tory, and they would definitely contest them. So these two Russian billionaires are going to contest for the groundless, what they refer to groundless EU sanctions on Russia. Well, and with that, you can clearly look at that now. The Russians are starting to actually hit back at the European sanctions on their country, because in the long run it will definitely affect the economic status of Russia as a country, cutting off from different sanctions that the European Union plus the Western powers have put on Russia after its invasion on Ukraine.
And you will realize that a number of people are continuing to question, because now there are media allegations that are coming out. I do not put this on mainstream media, but media in general, and here we're talking about social media. I don't know if you have seen that child or a teenager who was trying to attack maybe a Russian soldier, and now reports were coming out to say, hey, that is fake news being reported by media. This is now a 21-year-old, old lady somewhere, because that story there came after a very long time. So the reason why how social media tends to bring back a lot of historics, and then they turn to be actual events, and yet they are fake, and they cause a lot of concern and arising. And now critics on
like
social media,
the conflict,
especially on Twitter, what is happening is being the Russia-Ukraine war has been highlighted as a fake, and that is now also causing a lot
Everyone
of
is bringing their own theories regarding that.
Yes, opinions. But because I don't see fakeness really, because we are seeing a lot of, at least people are losing lives, and decisions that are being taken around there. This shows something very serious though. So sometimes we shouldn't take things light really.
And when it comes to the matters to do with humanity, humanity rights, as well as matters to do with safety of people, we also have Ugandans in there. So I mean, if you had your brother or if a relative in Ukraine, you would definitely worry.
Russia too.
I've actually seen some of Ugandans saying that Ukraine opened free visas for Ugandans to go and fight for them.
No, it's not that it opened it for Uganda, but there are allegations that there are reports, alleged reports.
More
that
so
now
on social media,
yes.
because these people on social media. I don't know what is wrong with social media in Uganda.
Because everyone has
people
got a right
to
to social media. You have got a right to put
anything.
whatever you want.
I think it has all sorts of non-professional reporters or journalists on social media.
Everyone tends to be a journalist on social media, putting on just displaying at least any information. But on how you use it, seriously depends on you, and it's not on the person really. It depends on you, how you use it, how you take it.
And the taxman in Uganda is yet to address that matter of saying that not everyone is going to speak anything on social media.
And we still await on that one.
All right, away from that particular situation, we do head into a break, but after that, we continue with more of the business tips, business quotes, weather forecast, and more business stories.